Which of the 12 Agile principles do we violate most often? That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast.
Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams.
Welcome back, my friend. I'm happy to see you. Thank you for joining me as always. Now look, anyone who has a serious Agile career would say it's inarguable that we ignore or abuse many of the 12 Agile principles. What is it about keeping things simple, letting the wisdom of open-ended virtues guide our work that proves almost impossible? First, let's take a moment to remember why we're here. To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters and what works, relentlessly chasing value and excellence like a badass. There's so many resources out there about what you need to do to be agile, but we're focused on who you need to become in order to lead teams. So let's hammer down those fundamentals to create a truly unique and powerful force in this industry. If this episode helps you, do me a favor, tell your friends, won't you? Okay, so which of the 12 have been heavily victimized and bastardized or conflated, heavily misunderstood or heavily mistreated? I think the first and important one has got to be value. We tend not to make things because we believe or can prove that they're valuable to the people paying for it. We tend to make things because someone tells us to make them, or sometimes we think we should. We think they're cool. We think it's technically important, when in fact, it doesn't matter. You still have to remember that if you're employed by a company, you're working for a business. That business has to keep its eye on the bottom line. But unless you want them all up in your stuff all day, every day, we can't really expect them to know everything that's going on every minute and to say, wait a sec, that's not valuable, don't do that. This is valuable, do this instead. They're expecting that we understand value to the business and be able to make good decisions, good empirical decisions, hopefully, about what customers will pay for, what they will treasure, what will delight them, and what won't. How many times have you found yourself building something where if someone were to ask you, why are we making this? You have to stop for a second and think, because we thought you really needed this feature, no? Or because the thing we made last year had this feature and we don't have it, so we thought we should include it. Well, there's a fine line between technical, architectural excellence, good sense, continuity, compatibility, all of those other virtues, and actual business value. And there are times in Agile, this is a classic story, we all know it, we all know the words to this one, where we build something that's not 100% compatible, it's not 100% integrated with existing systems, but putting the value in front of the customer faster was the real imperative. Not to say that you're supposed to build things willy-nilly, randomly, without care and concern for the systems that they interface with. But if you spend a year and a half of upfront planning to make that happen, somewhere out there is a customer who's tired of waiting for you to get it out there and will switch and pay somebody else to do it right. Here's the second one. This one's my favorite one. Simplicity. We definitely don't do simplicity well. We love to complicate things. And I would argue, it's my personal philosophy, we complicate things on purpose because it allows us to stall the release, putting our art out in front of people where it can be judged, broken, or outright rejected. Here's a recent example of outrageous complexity. I tried to help someone recently do a retrospective, a simple retrospective. They'd never done one before, big company. The goal was to inventory and then empty the cup. People had some grudges, some beefs. Let's air it all out. Get it all out on the table. Let everyone feel heard, and then start thinking about solutions to the most valuable of those problems, the ones that had the greatest financial or other impact. Let's do it priority order. Because if you've got a big laundry list of things that you think are broken and you want to fix, you can't fix them all in one shot. And we can't find solutions to all of them in one 1 hour sitting. It won't work. So if we focus and prioritize, we can come up with the most important problems with the greatest impact, the solutions to which should be fast, efficient, and reasonably quick to deploy. We could start erasing some of the damage, some of the costs of these problems, and start benefiting from having the solutions in place. So, list of problems, potential solutions for the highest priority ones, and then map those to activities like you would in any other kind of sprint. Well, before long, it got too big, and it became, wouldn't you know it, a spreadsheet. Now, do you think we were able to prioritize solutions based on the importance and severity of the problem? If everything is now locked into a bunch of cells that don't move and bend and flex? Nope. Everything was given equal weight. Everything was 100% important. Everything was 100% planned up front. Why not? You got all of these extra cells, all of these rows and columns. You got to fill them with something, or we're not really working, right? Come on, man. So something that should have taken an hour took probably 6 to 8 hours of progressive sessions where it's like, oh, we're not done yet. We didn't get through the full list yet. Also, we could squeak out some sort of demonstratable plan in Excel that, you know what, at the end of the day, probably got thrown out. I wouldn't know because I didn't stick around long enough. It wasn't adding any value. Why do we do that? Because even though it feels like we've expended energy, look, this took 10 people 10 hours each to develop this beautiful spreadsheet. You can see we're committed to value, committed to solutioning, right? No, you're not. If you were committed to value, if you were committed to solving our most important problems, you would look at the highest priority problems that we all democratically agree are the ones we should solve first, and you'd solve them first. Solutions, remediation should be in play in the next sprint, not after we submit this spreadsheet for approval and funding through some central resource and it gets whitewashed and watered down or straight up thrown out. That's the cost of an inability to keep things simple. Here's the next one that we constantly hammer on and mistreat: work not done. The art of saying no. Work that should never be finished or never even started or undertaken in the first place. That's where Agile can really save you time and money. But how many times do we feel empowered or emboldened as people to say no? No to the bosses, no to the company, saying no to an abstract set of criteria that we think we're being measured on. We're absolutely not good at this one. Here's the next one. Working software, or as I like to say, finished stuff. Because remember, not all of Agile is technical only. Agile has applications everywhere in the business. So marketing, finished marketing campaign, a social media ad that's live and running and testable, generating analytics, metrics, measurements, so we can see, is this working? Did this help? Done things. We abuse that one all the time. We tend to measure progress and success based on how many meetings we booked, how many hours we clocked, how much time we spent doing stuff, billable hours, and other such nonsense. Do we deliver value every week, every 2 weeks? Probably not. But the best of the best do. How about this one? Working directly with the business. That's right. Working with the people who pay for the stuff that we make. Hopefully, in an ideal world, the people who have the relationship with the end customer or stakeholder, who know firsthand what's being asked for, what's valuable, what will they pay for. And how come we can't work directly with business? Because we view time as a premium and busyness as a virtue. So business people tend to behave and act outwardly as if their time was the most precious thing in the universe, so they couldn't possibly sit down to talk with a group of developers for 20 minutes. I'm busy. I'm crazy busy. I got stuff to do. Okay, well, at what cost? At the cost of building the right thing for the customer. This one's related but separate. In-person communications. How about that one? Man, forget about it. That was the last one to be taken seriously. I think what ends up happening is people assume, once again, that in-person communication is time-consuming. We couldn't possibly. And if we're talking about a 12-person meeting for an hour or 2 hours, I agree. It is very expensive and very wasteful. However, walking over to someone's chair to ask a question is a way more efficient method than sending an email and then following up 3 days later when it gets buried or ignored. The overwhelming, overflowing inbox. We are so multitasking, multi-threaded these days that it's easy for a request that you send to simply get forgot. But if I'm standing over your shoulder, tap, tap, tap on your cubicle, that's the most effective way to get something done. Now, I understand we have remote teams, we have distributed teams. It's not always possible to be there in person. But, for example, what would be wrong with asking some stakeholder, whether it's the business person themselves, maybe it's the chief architect, maybe it's a developer of another system, to just hold office hours for you 20 minutes a week or 10 minutes a day. And if you don't show up for the office hours, they can work on, they can catch up on their email, they can clean their inbox. But if you do, it's a fast way to get your questions, concerns, clarifications handled at worst once per day. Anyway, those are the big ones. Some of the other ones get minor abuse, like technical quality being a measure of success, continuously evolving architectures. In fact, continuous reflection itself doesn't always get handled or implemented properly, but I think we do them better than the other ones we just spoke about. Why? Because I think the ones we just spoke about are the ones with the greatest sense of risk. Going and talking to a business person and asking a question, there's a risk they'll bark at you. Keeping things simple means you have no reason not to deliver finished stuff to try, to test, to get feedback on. Those things are scary. They're harder for many people to do consistently. And I think that's why we don't do them well. And here's a flip side to it, just quickly. There's actually some principles that seem to have sprouted up out of nowhere, as if there's really 15 or 16 Agile principles, and we've taken the liberty of deciding what they are, what they should be. Things like Agile equals Scrum, and Scrum equals Agile. Let me put this one to rest for you. No, it ain't. Number 2, we shouldn't measure hard things. We should measure things like team happiness. You should measure things that are hard to measure. I don't mean complicated to measure. I mean they expose problems directly. We spent a bunch of money to make revenue go up. Revenue didn't go up. That's what we should be measuring, because that's our ultimate barometer of success. Did we do it right? I think we should be held accountable to the very same things that the business are held accountable to when they sit in a shareholder meeting every quarter and describe how do we do. Anyway, if you're struggling with any of these, just take a moment to get back to those 12 principles and ask yourself, how could I do this better? Think about, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, how you could alter your practice so that we're honoring these principles better, not just as words to recite, but values and virtues to be lived. When you do that, I think you're on the path to being more agile. And until you can do those things, I wonder, are we really coaching the organization on agility in the first place? Do we really deserve the title of Agile Coach if we're teaching people to avoid complexity and face-to-face communication and accountability and true value measurement? Something to think about. My good friend, thank you for tuning in as always. Delighted to see you. You can reach out at badassagile.com or find me at the contact points in the show notes below. I can't wait for you to hear the next episode, but until then, stay badass.